You think Russia's military would absolutely crush Britain in a fight. I thought the same thing until I actually looked at the data. And what I found changes everything you think you know about military power. Russia has 1.3 million active soldiers. Britain has 147,000. Russia operates 12,420 tanks. Britain has 227, 4,000 Russian aircraft versus 824 British. On paper, Russia should dominate. Except there's a problem, a massive problem nobody's talking about. Russia's getting beaten by Ukraine, a country Britain trained, using British weapons, British tactics, British intelligence. Meanwhile, Russia, with 10 times the soldiers, 50 times the tanks, is struggling to advance against an opponent 1/5 their size. Something doesn't add up. So I spent 3 days analyzing actual combat data, equipment readiness, training standards, and battlefield performance. And the comparison everyone thinks they understand? Completely backwards. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you will make you question every military ranking you've ever seen. Here's what Russia wants you to believe. They're ranked second globally by global firepower, massive military, modern equipment, combat-proven forces. The numbers look terrifying, but numbers lie. Watch this. Russia counts 12,420 tanks in their inventory. Sounds impressive until you realize 70% are T-72s and T-80s sitting in open-air storage facilities for 40 years. Rusting, non-functional. Many don't even have engines. British intelligence estimates maybe 3,000 to 4,000 are actually operational. Maybe. Britain lists 227 tanks. Every single one is combat ready. Challenger 2s and the new Challenger 3s. Modern, maintained, deployable tomorrow. That's the difference between inventory and reality. Russia lists 4,000 aircraft. Actual operational readiness? Western estimates put it around 50%. Half their air force can't fly on any given day due to maintenance issues, parts shortages, or just being obsolete. Britain's 824 aircraft operate at 75% readiness. 3/4 of British aircraft are ready to fly right now. Are you starting to see the pattern? Let's talk about what actually happens when these weapons meet on a battlefield. Real combat, not propaganda. Ukrainian forces, trained by Britain for 32 weeks under Operation Interflex, have been systematically destroying Russian equipment. You know what Russian tank crews call the Challenger 2? The Ghost. Because they don't see it before their vehicle explodes. Challenger 2 has a combat range of 4.5 kilometers with precision accuracy. Russian T-90S, maybe 3 kilometers, and accuracy drops off dramatically. Ukrainian Challenger 2 crews position at maximum range, where Russian tanks can barely detect them, and pick them off one by one. It's not a tank battle, it's long-range execution. But here's what really matters. When a Challenger 2 gets hit, and 2 have been destroyed in Ukraine, the crew survives. All of them walked away, both times. Russian tanks? The turret doesn't walk away, it flies, 20 meters into the air. Because Russian autoloader designs store ammunition in a carousel directly under the crew compartment. When penetrated, all those rounds detonate simultaneously. The explosion's so powerful, it literally throws the turret off the vehicle. Crew survival rate? Essentially zero. There are hundreds of videos from Ukraine showing this exact phenomenon. Russian tankers call it jack-in-the-box. Western analysts call it a fundamental design flaw. I call it the difference between treating your crew as expendable versus treating them as your most valuable asset. A tank costs millions. A trained crew is priceless. Britain can lose tanks and still keep fighting because the crews survive, learn, adapt, and get assigned new vehicles. Russia loses the crew with a tank every single time. That's not sustainable. Now let's talk about aircraft. Russia operates Su-35s, Su-30s, some Su-57s, they claim. Britain flies F-35s and Typhoons. On paper, comparable. In practice? Not even close. British F-35s are networked. They share data in real time with other aircraft, ships, ground forces, and satellites. A British pilot doesn't just see what their sensors detect. They see what every sensor in the battle space detects. It's information dominance. Russian aircraft? They're flying with 1990s era avionics in many cases. Limited data link capabilities. Pilots operate with the information their individual aircraft provides. British pilots are operating with omniscience. Russian pilots are flying half-blind. And here's the kicker about that Su-57, Russia's supposed fifth-generation stealth fighter. They've built maybe 10 aircraft. Britain's got 48 F-35s and climbing. The US has hundreds more. One NATO strike package has more fifth-gen aircraft than Russia's entire inventory. Quality doesn't just beat quantity. Quality makes quantity irrelevant when the technology gap is this wide. Britain's military is a 100% professional volunteer force. Every single person chose to be there. They signed up, went through rigorous selection, completed months of training, and decided military service was their career. Russia? Conscription. Forced service. Grab 160,000 young men twice a year, give them minimal training, and hope they don't desert. British infantry training, 28 weeks minimum. Royal Marines, 32 weeks, the longest and hardest infantry training in NATO. Specialist roles go longer, some over a year before you're considered fully trained. Russian conscript training, often 6 to 8 weeks before deployment to frontline units. There are documented reports from Ukraine of Russian soldiers getting 2 weeks of training before being sent into combat. 2 weeks. That's not training. That's a death sentence with extra steps. British NCOs, non-commissioned officers, your sergeants and corporals, average 10 to 15 years of experience. These are career professionals who've trained for years, deployed multiple times, and know their job inside and out. The Russian NCO crisis is well documented. They don't have a professional NCO corps the way Western militaries do. You get conscripts with marginally more experience telling other conscripts what to do. It's not professional military leadership, it's barely organized chaos. British forces in Ukraine have trained over 50,000 Ukrainian troops through Operation Interflex. 90% of those soldiers report feeling significantly better prepared for combat after British training. Those aren't my numbers. That's from Ukrainian post-training surveys. Those British-trained Ukrainians are the ones destroying Russian units on the battlefield right now. Let that sink in. Britain trained an army that's beating Russia. That's not a coincidence. RAF pilot training takes 3+ years to get someone combat ready. Russian pilot flight hours have been severely reduced due to fuel costs and maintenance issues. British pilots train more in 1 year than many Russian pilots train in 3. When British pilots engage, they're not just better trained. They've flown hundreds more hours, practiced scenarios Russian pilots never encounter, and operate aircraft with capabilities Russia literally cannot match. But it's the morale factor that really separates these forces. British soldiers volunteer. They want to be there. Russian conscripts are forced. Many are actively trying to avoid service. There's a reason Russia's having recruitment crises even with massive signing bonuses. Nobody wants to die in Ukraine for a war they don't believe in. You know what happens when you have an unmotivated, poorly trained force fighting a motivated, well-trained opponent? Ukraine's been showing us for 3 years. Massive Russian casualties, entire units refusing orders, morale collapse, surrender. That's not Western propaganda. Russian military bloggers are documenting this themselves on Telegram. Britain doesn't fight alone, ever. They're part of NATO, Five Eyes intelligence sharing, AUKUS, the Commonwealth, EU defense partnerships, a web of alliances that makes their effective military power exponentially larger than their raw numbers suggest. Russia's alliances: Belarus, which can barely maintain its own military; Iran, which is not a military powerhouse; North Korea, which is literally sending troops as cannon fodder; China, who won't commit to defending Russia militarily and is mostly using Russia as a cheap resource supplier. Here's what Britain's alliances actually mean in practice. British intelligence doesn't just rely on British satellites. They get real-time intelligence from American satellites, French satellites, German reconnaissance, Norwegian signals intelligence, Australian naval tracking. The collective intelligence apparatus of NATO is available to British forces. Russia gets information from Russian sources. Occasionally, Iran shares something. North Korea's intel capability is minimal. China shares strategically, but won't give Russia their best intelligence because they don't trust Moscow not to compromise it. British F-35s aren't just connected to other British systems. They're connected to American, Norwegian, Italian, Dutch, Australian F-35s. The entire F-35 fleet operates as one massive networked sensor platform. If an American F-35 in the Pacific detects something, a British F-35 knows about it instantly. Russia's aircraft don't even share data effectively with each other, let alone with allied forces. NATO combined defense spending in 2024, $1.47 trillion. Russia's defense spending, approximately $100 to $150 billion, depending on how you count black budget items. Russia's trying to compete militarily against an alliance that outspends them 10 to 1. That's unsustainable. Article 5. NATO's Collective Defense Clause means an attack on Britain triggers a response from 31 other nations, including the United States. Russia attacks Britain. They're fighting America, France, Germany, Poland, Canada, Turkey, Italy, and 24 other countries simultaneously. Russia's allies won't come to their defense. Belarus can't. North Korea won't risk it. Iran would be suicidal to engage NATO directly. China's not fighting a war for Russia. They've made that clear through their careful neutrality in Ukraine. Britain can call on American aircraft carriers, French nuclear submarines, German armored divisions, Polish artillery, Italian air power. Russia fights alone. Technology sharing is another massive advantage. Britain has access to American stealth technology, Israeli cybersecurity, German engineering, French naval design. They collaborate on weapons development, share research, and integrate systems. The best technology from dozens of countries flows to British forces. Russia's locked out. Western tech companies won't work with them. Sanctions cut off advanced semiconductors. They're trying to build 21st century weapons with 20th century components smuggled from China and whatever they can scavenge from washing machines. I'm not joking. There are documented cases of Russian military systems using chips pulled from commercial appliances because they can't get proper military-grade components. The strategic geography factor is huge too. Britain's an island nation. To attack Britain, Russia would need to cross NATO airspace or navigate past NATO naval forces through choke points Britain and allies control. That's not happening. Britain can operate from a position of strategic security. Their homeland isn't under immediate threat. They can project power abroad without worrying about defense at home because NATO has that covered. Russia has land borders with multiple NATO countries. They have to defend thousands of kilometers of frontier. They can't concentrate forces the way Britain can because they're spread thin across multiple potential threat axes.